Welcome back to War Thunder, and welcome to the tank review on the LVT A4 Zis-2, which is an American rank 2 battle rating 2.3 reward vehicle. And it is, to make it short or to give you the summary of it, the normal LVT A1 that you can find in the normal tech tree for the Americans, and is a reserve amphibious tank. And the LVT A4 is also capable of swimming, and it is a blend between the LVT A1 and also the Russian Zis-2 tank destroyer. While it shares the chassis of the LVT A1, it has the gun of the Zis-2. Sadly, this turret here is not fully rotatable and it's open top, and the increased battle rating means that you struggle a little bit when taking shots. I will give you a full rundown and comparison to the previously two mentioned vehicles and its main opponents on the battlefield. We'll give you tips and tricks how to make this tank work, and I also have really great gameplay for you and several Ace Tanker gameplays. But I have to say before I make tank review that this vehicle is not such a seal clubber as the American M8A1 is from last year's winter marathon. But to be honest, this is just the first stage, and I'm really looking forward to the Type 62 in this respect. So this is the tank that you got after 6 stages, and I got mine today. Now, I have to say, this tank is kind of in one respect overkill and in other respects a little bit underwhelming. But I think let's bring it on with the tank review. First, let's have a quick look at the armor, and this is a very, very big vehicle, and it has not the greatest of armor. 12.7 millimeters. Here at the front it is rounded, so machine gun fire will get absorbed, especially here. You also can absorb some auto-loading cannon fire from AAAs, 20 millimeters, something like that. Same goes for here. This 6.35 millimeters is very thin and it is kind of visible. And while I mention it is because 20 millimeter and above can partially overmatch it, and 40 millimeters will overmatch this here. So it doesn't matter at which angle you hit, it should be an overmatch. And that has nothing to do with the 30% interaction rule, which is something different. The same goes here for this 6.35 millimeter step. The gun itself has here bottom armor plate of 38.1 millimeters. That is the strongest armor on the entire tank. Then we have this gun shield around the gun with just 5 millimeters. It even can hold some machine gun fire, although it shouldn't according to the penetration values. But light machine gun fire will be mostly absorbed by the shield. But there are some gaps in the shield, like here, and just here below the gun you can see that it shows the back armor plate here. From the rear it's actually better visible if I turn off the armor. So for gun elevation and depression, it seems like, and also the recoil, there are some gaps, so if you hit them you can knock out the crew from behind. Then it is from the side just 6 millimeters, additional spaced armor 6 millimeters here, those pontons. This vehicle is amphibious like its American counterpart, the LVT A1. The rear is also just 6 millimeters, top is 6 millimeters, open top here. The side of the turret is 25.4 millimeters, which is kind of nice. Even heavy machine gun fire will not go through. And I'll show you why it is. In the X-ray, we can see that we have 5 crew members, of which the machine gunner and the driver sit in the front, and they have this huge transmission in front of them, and that truly absorbs a lot of shrapnels from artillery strikes from the front, or the autocannon fire, but you still can fire above the transmission and knock them out easily. And then we have the remaining 3 crew members, namely the gunner, the loader and the commander in the turret, and that is a little bit awkward as this tank is huge, but the 2 crew member compartments, so to speak, are very far apart from each other, but they are tightly grouped. And you should always shoot the turret of it, not just to knock out the gun, but to also kill the gunner, the loader, and the commander. The next thing is the ammunition. We have here 76 rounds for this 57mm gun, and we have 4 ammo racks in total. Those 2 ready ammo racks with 6 rounds each. Remove them. It greatly increases your survivability from random shots, so to speak. And then we have this huge ammo racks here. You should remove like all of it except 30 rounds in total. That just leaves you this ammo rack here. And 30 rounds are truly enough for this gun, as I will point out later. Then we have this transmission that goes through the entirety of the tank and leads back to the engine, to the fuel tanks and the radiators. So this tank has a lot of empty room, and so solid shots might not always find something to hit to damage it. But APHE shells, well, if they enter from the front, like from the Panzer IVs, you know, the short 75mm, they will penetrate. But this tank is so huge that their splash doesn't go to the rear of the crew compartment here in the turret. So this is that gives you just an idea how huge this tank is. But I think you get the idea. Just remove all the ammunition except 30 shells, and you have the best kind of survivability. The next topic that I want to talk about is the mobility, and as you can see, the LVT A4 Zis-2 does have a nice engine with 250 horsepower, but it is also, in this comparison, the heaviest vehicle with 18.4 tons. While it has the same horsepower as the American Reserve counterpart, it is heavier by nearly 3 tons, and that results in a 18% less horsepower to ton ratio than the reserve version. So you just have under 14 horsepower per tons. The top speed is alright though, 40 kilometers an hour. It's not the slowest, but definitely not the fastest, and because of your limited horsepower to ton ratio in comparison, you cruise around mostly below that. But on flat ground, and especially downhills, you nearly see it very often, nearly all the time. But when you get uphills, you're very, very slow. Like the reverse speed, which is one of the slowest with just -4 kilometers an hour. So all the stats, with the exception of the weight and therefore also the horsepower to ton ratio, are the same. All vehicles in this comparison have no neutral steering. Now I just want to point out that tanks like the Panzer IIH or the T50 are much more mobile, have a much better horsepower to ton ratio, and are much more nimble and maneuverable. Now I have to say one thing about the LVT. It is really great on hard terrain, for example on city streets, but it is very, very bad due to the narrow tracks, for example on muddy terrain. While this tank is also amphibious, or it does have the capabilities, in water it's somewhere between 8 and 10 kilometers an hour forwards, but it can't go backwards, and also maneuverability in the water is not the greatest. Also shooting while being in the water is very difficult, as you whip up and down all the time and therefore miss most of your shots, and as we can see in a moment, that's not the best to do. Now let's talk about the firepower, and we begin with the gun overall. The LVT A4 Zis-2 has obviously that Zis-2 cannon, which is the very same gun that the Zis-30, the Russian rank 2 tank destroyer, gets. It is a 57mm high velocity gun, and the American tank destroyer can carry 76 shells, whereas the Russian version just can carry 30. So you can carry 2.5 times what the Russian one can, and those shells are highly effective, but you pay for it with having the longest reload. Surprisingly, this vehicle has a 6.7 seconds reload, which is a very long reload for this battle rating in particular, but also in comparison to the Zis-2, which has the exact same gun. So it's kind of surprising why you have a 30% longer reload. And as you can see, just the Ji-he, the Japanese tank, has a kind of comparable reload, but it's still nearly 12% faster. The turret rotational speed, on the other hand, is 11.3 degrees. That is certainly not the worst, but because it's not a fully rotatable turret, you just can rotate it like 30-35 degrees to the left and to the right. It kind of limits your options, so it's kind of a casemate tank destroyer. Kind of like the Zis-2 in this respect, but with nearly twice the turret rotation speed. The gun depression, on the other hand, is not the very best, -5 degrees, but still 1 degree more than the Russian counterpart, the Zis-2, but not even half of what the American reserve tier counterpart does have, the LVT A1, with -12. Also, the gun elevation is by far the worst in this comparison with just 15 degrees, but that is not really a drawback in most situations. So when we summarize this tank is that it doesn't have the very best mobility, a relatively bad maneuverability, and also the gun handling seems to be a bit wanky. But you know, the gun has a lot of good stats except for the reload. And how can we get this into a tactic, how to play this tank? Hands down, this is the exact opposite of a brawling tank. It is indeed the low tier sniper, and what a sniper it is, because let's have a look at the ammunition. The first stock shell type is the O271 HE shell, and that is the very same exact shell as you get on the Zis-2. 700 meters per second muzzle velocity is not bad. 220 grams of explosive mass, which is TNT, not too bad. 5 millimeters of penetration, kind of worthless. You should avoid, you know, facing AAA vehicles in the first place, and when you do, try to take them out with the AP shells, which are great. And the first out of 2 APHE shells is the BR271 APHE BC shell, and it is very fast with 990 meters per second muzzle velocity. That is very close in terms of muzzle velocity to, for example, the Germans' long 88 on such tanks like the King Tiger or the Ferdinand. So it is very easy to aim and to lead, especially at low tiers where tankers normally use their guns like up to 500 meters. You can easily snipe 1.5 kilometers away. But the explosive mass is 14 grams of the A92 explosive type, and that results in just under 24 grams of TNT equivalent, which is not too bad. But I have to say the fuse is with 15 millimeters not too bad. 121 millimeters of penetration just means that you can deal with everything. You can literally deal with everything, even in a max up tier. So even with KV1s and such stuff. But this shell type is not the best you can get, at least in terms of penetration. And the title for the highest penetration APHE shell at rank 1 goes to the BR471K. 135 millimeters of penetration is the equivalent to the Panzer IV F2's APHE shell in terms of penetration, but you have a muzzle velocity again of 990 meters per second. Again, very easy to aim, very easy to lead, very easy to hit your target, and you have a TNT equivalent of 30.6 grams. That is like 7 grams more of TNT equivalent than the previous shell. It is a rank 2 upgrade, and the only downside of this shell in comparison to the other one is that the fuse sensitivity is 20 millimeters. That means when you have to deal with lightly armored vehicles, it is very often better to use the stock APHE shell. And you have simply the ammunition count for it, unlike on the Zis-2. So if you think that you wanna have a bit more variety of shell types, you should carry both APHE shells, but leave out the HE. It is literally useless. So you can punch through everything, and you also can hit your targets very easily, very fast from far range, and that really gives you the role of a sniper. But the downgrade is that you can't do ridgeline working because of your size and the lack of gun depression, and also the reload is very long, so you shouldn't try to trade shots, so to speak. When somebody doesn't penetrate you, he was either very unlucky or has a very bad gun with very bad ammunition. This tank plays very unique. Some say it can be overpowered in certain situations. I agree, but it is also relatively easy picking if your enemy knows what he is doing. If he immobilizes you, if he and flanks you, you can't do anything because of your limited turret traverse of 30-35 degrees to each side. Your turret traverse speed is not the very best, so turning with somebody that tries to circle you, especially in arcade, is not the very best thing to do. Also because of also the gun elevation speed, which is not the greatest, and in combination with the limited gun traverse and so on, close range brawling is difficult to bring your gun on target and to aim properly. On the other hand, you do not have to aim that good when you have just the opportunity to bring the shell onto the target, because you mostly will penetrate anywhere at any distance anyways at this battle rating and this tier, and you have APHE shells, and the damaging effect of the BR271K is really feelable better than the stock shell, which isn't too bad either. So it has the firepower, it has decent mobility overall, but it performs very best as a sniper and not so good as a brawler. So let's have a quick look at the results of the Ace here on Poland. And we can see that I got nearly 13,000 silver lions and 1,840 vehicle research points, and I was 13th team with 1,609 score points. So that was a really nice result right there. But let's bring it on with another gameplay. And here we are on the Fields of Normandy, a map that I really like in realistic, with long range tank destroyers when they have decent mobility. Not so much at high tier, but at low tier it's a really nice map. I see a Panzer IV. I aim for him. Don't see him yet. Yeah, this map is also not really nice in arcade, if I remember correctly, but in realistic it's quite nice. If you know how to play it, it's not so easy to play it, but when you know and figure it out and the enemy doesn't steamroll you, it offers you a lot of possibilities. And the third shell goes into the Panzer IV through the mid plate and killing the remaining crew members. Next Panzer IV, I miss him. I didn't quite give enough lead through the bush there, but then I see the muzzle blast. I see him again through the mid plate and he dies instantly, killing all the crew members. So this is the effect of, if I'm not mistaken, that was the upgraded shell. I can't quite remember. I had to make a choice here which gameplay I show you, either a 6-kill gameplay on the Abandoned Factory, again I just simply love that map, or here on Fields of Normandy, another favorite of mine personally. And I thought to myself, well, the battle on the Abandoned Factory turned into a campfest at the end again, because we steamrolled the enemy. Not so much of a showcase how the gun performs in its natural environment, so to speak, and how the vehicle itself performs, because you have wonderful hard terrain. Here it's kind of a bit better visible how the overall maneuverability and so on are to be seen. And at this point we again have played the enemy out and the majority of the enemies are already dead. But it didn't have too much impact in this game up until this point. I played this tank quite a bit today after I got it, and I just couldn't get into those situations where I could really stand at a point and snipe. But while it is great to play as a sniper, not really a camper, but a sniper that just covers the most important parts of a map or the capture point for that reason, you know, there is a big difference in my opinion between a sniper and a camper. Although many people just say it's the same, but then they really don't know what's the difference between how to use a tank properly and how to be very lazy and ineffective in the most parts for your team. And so it was kind of surprising because this is low tier. And I also didn't see at that time when I played it the LVT spam that I expected. So it seems like not so many people actually went for this reward vehicle. It might change within the next few days when people that left out some days might catch up to this vehicle. Remember, just 6 tasks have to be fulfilled for this vehicle instead of the normal 10 for the top end reward vehicle that is the Type 62 for this year. By the way, the plane I have as well, the Ki 21 if I'm not mistaken, looks great. There is one thing that I really want to try out because it is kind of advertised. I will make a separate video about it once I figure it out, but it seems to be a nice bomber indeed, but not very special in this respect, but we will see. Back to the gameplay. So I just simply had nothing to shoot at. And very often in these low tier games, they either are over very fast or again they drag out unnecessary. Yes, this is kind of the meta of RB, kind of spawn point system, people just leaving the match because they just see it coming that their team is losing and they don't think it's worth carrying on. But for me, you know, that you get this high kill streaks is something completely different to the quality of a kill streak or a kill itself. Is the tank itself good does not really tell you too much about how many kills you can make. When you are on the front line with a heavy tank, you do not make too many kills in comparison to a flanking medium. Then there is the difference of the ammunition. Can you knock out the enemy tank with one shell, like this tank can do at its battle rating? Or do you have to be kind of a tank surgeon, like for example the British tanks are known for, but they have therefore a higher rate of fire and normally great penetration values overall. It is always a bit different, and you know, never can you describe a tank with one word. Although you can see when I hit a tank I did tremendous amounts of damage. I always penetrated the tank, and the gun for this battle rating really has a long reload, but it's not cripplingly long, if you know what I mean. And so I'm just here trying to spot the last enemies. I see one here, blind shot over the ridgeline, hit the transmission of this Gepard if I'm not mistaken. Bit of correction, and I take him out. Penetrating right through the upper plate, which is kind of heavily angled. So quite a nice result, although you just have to kill one of the 2 crew members on the Gepard, so it's not really a statement of how good the tank really is. I have to say, I'm really confident, speaking about penetration, yeah, bouncing off the side of a Panzer IV, although it was a great angle, but the second shell kills him by just smacking through the turret. Although the turret of a Panzer IV is not known for its tremendous amounts of thick armor. But back to what I wanted to say, I'm pretty sure that this tank will be a troll tank for American tank drivers. They will use it in up tiers because of the good penetration value of the gun. And when you take it into up tiers, the longer reload is really not that spectacularly long, if you know what I mean. Most tanks then have to deal with longer reloads. One thing that I forgot to mention is that you have no coaxial machine gun. There is just a machine gunner in the front section of the tank, and I just didn't hear the fire going on. I just saw the message. So after I killed this tank, I also didn't see any flames or smoke column. So seems to be, if this has to be fixed by Gaijin, relatively long repair times. We are used to that. Yeah, but what I wanted to say is the machine gun is also a problem. You usually, with American tanks, you have a 50 cal mounted on the top. With this tank, you don't have it. Sadly, as you could see, it would help out greatly against aircraft or other lightly armored tanks to at least cripple them and give your main gun enough time to get on target, which is, especially in arcade, very critical. And I love my American tanks with 50 cals. They are a really great secondary weapon, and it feels like a bit more than just a machine gun for tanks, that is. Now here the battle is over. We were just driving around looking for the lost enemies, and again it's just one enemy that is kind of hiding somewhere and we can't find him, so the battle drags out for a few minutes. But still, the result is nice. The map just gave me the opportunity for a bit long-range engagements for that battle rating. And there the battle is over. Quick look at the results show us that we earned 22,000 civil lines and 2,153 research points. That unlocked me the suspension. 1,428 score points were good enough for rank 3. So that's it with the tank review for the LVT A4 Zis-2. I hope you liked it. I hope I could give you a bit of an insight so that you know what you have to deal with when you face this vehicle. And if so, please give this video a like, subscribe if you want to see more, and we will see each other on the battlefields of War Thunder.